Hi, welcome to my podcast, Reclaim. I am your host, Thaís Sky. I have supported women navigate the complexities of being human for over 10 years. This podcast is where I disseminate some of those learnings and offer thoughts and guests to guide you into your healing. Welcome. Hello, beautiful humans. Thaís Sky here. Welcome to Reclaim the podcast. I'm thrilled to be here with you all. I really didn't mean to take a 3-week break from the podcast, but with some rescheduling issues with guests, and I hosted a workshop, and I just had so much going on that I just didn't end up recording new episodes. And now it has come to the end of the year. We are about 7 weeks away from being done 2021, which, can you even believe it? And I have decided, similarly to what I've done last year, and I'm pretty sure the year before that, I am doing a social media hiatus and also a podcast hiatus. I will be doing a social media hiatus for maybe about a month, but podcast hiatus probably a little longer. I will be bringing back episodes in January. So you won't hear from me again on the podcast until January. And so I thought what I would do with this episode is I wanted to share some of the lessons, the concepts that I've been really munching on this past year. I want to open you all up to a little bit of my internal process of what I've been learning, what I've been navigating over this past year, in hopes that it will help you think about what lessons you've learned this past year. This winter, I will be releasing my Worthy Women Rise Year in Review. I have offered, 4 iterations of it so far. I think this will be my 4th or 5th. And in it, I offer hundreds of questions to help you reflect in the previous year. So I haven't actually had an opportunity to do my full year in review yet because it's only November. We still have some time left, but I did learn some really big lessons. And when I say learn them, it doesn't mean that I've mastered them, but it certainly means that I'm continuing to munch on them. And I want to share those lessons with all of you. I also want to give you a peek into my business. I want to share with you some lessons that I've learned in hosting the first ever year-long Worthy Women Rise. And I want to talk about the things that I've learned from that experience to support you if you are a coach that wants to run longer term containers. Maybe you'll learn maybe it'll be helpful for you to learn some things that I've learned. And if you are interested in joining Worthy Women Rise next year, maybe hearing about what it feels like on my end to host and hold this container may help you see if this is the right fit for you. So I'm also going to be talking about that. But first, I want to offer a little bit of what you can expect from Thaís Sky Inc. from now until you hear from me in January. Right now, I do have some spots open for one-on-one work with me. I have been on a wait list for a little while now, since June. So this is a great opportunity for you to get one-on-one support with me and get yourself set up for the new year. One-on-one work with me is for sensitive, smart, soulful humans who are interested in cultivating insight and learning more about their worthiness wound so they can finally get out of their own way. One-on-one work with me is an opportunity to lean into your softness, to learn more about yourself, your patterns, and to help break decades-long painful ruptures and painful ruptures and patterns and ways of being that has really created a life that doesn't feel right. My work in the one-on-one container is to help you set up the life that you are craving to live. So you can go learn more and apply at thaissky.com/coaching. you can learn more about coaching there and apply there. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, setting my business systems up on the back end. I have decided to, once again, I did this back in the last cohort of Worthy Women Rise, but to do rolling admissions. So I notified the waitlist and I have opened up application process for Worthy Women Rise. Our next cohort will be launched in February. We'll start February 27th. I'll be doing the 5-month version in the spring and then the year-long version in the fall. So if you know that Worthy Women Rise is the right fit for you, you've been hearing about it, you've been wanting to join, and it just hasn't felt like the right moment, you can go learn more at worthywomenrise.com. And if it's feeling like, yes, I want to be a part of the next cohort, you can apply there. Okay, so that's number two. And if you apply before the official launch period in February, I will be sending you a little gift. I'm not sure what that is yet, but it's going to be really good. So stay tuned for that. Okay. And then the third thing that's important for you to know is that I do have openings in my mentorship. I have openings in my one-on-one mentorship as well as my group mentorship. Now, you all know I've been talking a lot about it in the series, The Art of Depth Coaching, which if you've missed, it's just one episode previous to this one, where we talked a lot about depth coaching. And so you can check it out. And if that's all feeling like a yes, you can go to thaissky.com/mentorship to learn more and apply. Okay, so those are the 3 ways that you can be a part of my world in the next few months. You can also join my email list at thaissky.com/email. I am going to be creating a meditation. I'm going to be sending it out to my list, and that's it. Only people on my list get access to this meditation, and then I will be putting it for sale on my website after I send it out. So make sure you're on my email list to get access to that meditation. It's going to be really good. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do yet, but it's going to be a meditation, and I'm going to add into Worthy Women Rise, and it's just going to be really good. I haven't done a new meditation in a long time, so I'm excited about that. And if you're on my list, you'll also know when my Worthy Women Rise year in review will get released, probably the first or second week in December. So make sure you're on my newsletter list in order for you to get all the info that you need, especially since I will be on a social media hiatus for the next month. Okay? So those are the 3 ways that you can work with me. I'm really excited about 2022. As many of you know, if you have been on my Instagram last week, is I am finally complete the 3,000 hours necessary to apply for licensure to become a marriage family therapist in the state of California. I have been working really hard towards those hours. I started grad school back in 2018 and 1 year into grad school. So 2019 is when I started my clinical training. And so on top of grad school, I volunteered 25 to 30 hours of my week, every week for the past 2.5 years to get done these hours. And it's exciting. It's exciting to be done. My calendar feels very open now that I'm not volunteering so much of my time. And it's going to be a great opportunity the next month to continue to slow down and celebrate and recalibrate, because this past 3.5 years have really done a number on my health and my vitality. I've had to stop doing a lot of things that I really love, and now I get to insert those things back in. And so being done my hours, for those of you who may be interested in becoming a psychotherapist, it's a big deal. And I've submitted my hours to the board, and now I wait for them to review. And hopefully that will be just in a few months. And then I will take my test and be licensed. It's all very exciting. But as of now, nothing is changing in my business. So you can still do one-on-one work with me, no matter where you are in the world. Although that may or may not change in a new year once I'm licensed. I haven't thought of that yet. But anyway, so it's been a big transitional year for me and a big transitional moment for me. And I've learned a lot about myself in transitions. And I think that that is an opportunity for us to learn more about ourselves, is when we are in transition. One could argue that maybe life, the entirety of life, is a transition. I know that certainly I live my life in a way that I am constantly opening new chapters. And that's can be great. And it can also mean that maybe I'm not staying in a chapter long enough to really learn what I need to learn from those chapters before I just move into next chapters. And so in reflecting in this past year, here's something that I've learned and continue to learn about the human experience, both for myself and for my clients and patients, is that, in order for us to feel really different in our lives, if we want to feel more expansive, if we want to feel more abundant, if we want to feel worthy, if we want to feel taken care of or supported, nourished, if, all of the adjectives that you may use to describe like how you want to feel in your life, in order for us to feel something consistently different, let's say right now that you consistently feel in despair or hopelessness or fear or anxiety, right? In order for us to go from feeling those things to feeling the way that we want to feel, we actually have to become different. And this is a big deal, because I think while on the one hand, we want to change and we want to grow and we want to heal and we want to feel different, it's important to acknowledge the places within us that actually very much doesn't want to change and actually very much doesn't want to do the necessary work to change, and actually feels very committed to staying in where we are. And I read this section of a book that I think it kind of shapes this conversation. And so I want to read this paragraph to you. Okay, so it says, truth is, many patients do not come to therapy to change. Not really. They may say and think they want to change. It soon becomes evident they want to continue being exactly the person they have been and living life in the exact same limiting ways, but feel better doing it. Real therapy begins with helping the person not only understand but truly take to heart that what they want is impossible. In other words, the real work of therapy may begin with crushing disappointment as the patient struggles to reconcile with the painful truth that neither the therapist nor anyone else has the power to give them what they want. To feel different, they must become different, and there is no bypass around the psychological work. Paradoxically, it is very terrible disappointment that opens the door to realistic hope. Okay, so this is a book about psychotherapy, but I apply it to my own experience, both being in psychotherapy as a patient, but also in being a human being, right? Is that we often go to a therapist or a coach or a healer in some kind, and what we really want is to feel better in the exact same way that we've been living our lives. Like we want the anxiety to be alleviated, or we want ourselves to feel happier, we want to feel lighter, but we want to stay the same, right? And I think, so this paragraph that I just read is by a book called Mary Jo Peebles. The book is called When Psychotherapy Feels Stuck. But anyway, the interesting aspect of that I have seen for myself, and maybe you have seen for yourself, is that in order for us to come to terms with the fact that we need to become different if we want to feel different, is that we have to face the disappointment, the immense disappointment that life can't change without us changing. This is disappointing. Because I think many of us hold this hope that things can just feel different, that there will be a savior, that there will be someone who will come and change our lives. So we hire the people, we hire the experts, and we really put faith and hope that they will give us the quick fix, that they will give us the tool that will change our lives in a way that we don't actually have to participate. And I've felt that for myself in a real big way this year. That actually so much of the ways in which I am unhappy is constructed by me, right? Like the ways in which I feel relationally stuck, or the ways in which I feel dissatisfied, or the ways in which I feel like there is a constant chase, a constant need for more validation, more. It is created. It is perpetuated by me. It may not have been quote unquote created by me, right? This is where it's important for us to acknowledge the system in which we were raised in, both culturally and also familially. We must also acknowledge the intersection of how we have learned to navigate oppression or familial challenges, and that we kind of developed our way of being as the most alive way, the most important way that we could stay psychically tethered or psychically alive. It's important to acknowledge that. As a child, that is true. As an adult, things are now different, because now no one is going to come and change our system. No one is going to come and offer the quick fix. And, it is maddening how no one is going to save us. And sometimes I look at our world, and I look at climate change, and I look at politics in the United States, and I look at the greater culture. I'm starting to get emotional here. And I just feel so terribly sad for our planet, and feel so terribly sad for the human condition, and want so desperately. And I think culturally we are wanting so desperately for someone to save us. We're looking at politicians to save us, or we're looking at people that we've elected, or people that we've put in charge, or the CEOs and the billionaires. And we look at others and hope that others will somehow do the decent thing, do the right thing. And while it is fair for us to want people to do the right thing, it's also important for us to really face the ways in which we're hoping we don't have to change in order for life to change. And that things like climate change, things like the political atmosphere in the US, it really comes down to also individual participation. That how we participate in it matters. How we operate in our lives matter. How we view things matter. And that, once again, no one is really going to come to save us. And I know that can feel a despair. It can tap into a despair and a depression and a sadness of, fuck, I've been fighting so hard, and now you're telling me that I'm going to have to keep fighting. But I'm not suggesting that it has to continue to be a fight. But I am suggesting that it requires us to really confront this part of us that wants to be saved, and grapple with the disappointment that no one will save us, in order for us to open up and access, and Mary Jo People says, access the realistic hope. That actually people can help us, that we can help each other, that you can bring on a professional, a therapist, a coach to help you make sense of your world, but they can't do the work for you. And I see this a lot in my mentorship with my mentees. These are coaches who oftentimes really take on this caregiver role, right? They come into coaching, they come into this work because they want to help the world. And then they have to grapple with the fact that their clients are coming to them wanting a quick fix, wanting the coach to do all of the work. And it's hard, because then as coaches, we feel like we're letting down our clients if we're not giving them all the answers, or giving them, changing their lives. And the way that the coaching world is very orchestrated is in such a way that the coach offers the transformation, but that's actually really not how it works. And I know I've talked about it in depth in the Art of Depth coaching, but it's just not how it works. And so if you're a coach, if you're a healer, a therapist, it's important for us to ease off of this belief that somehow we are responsible for the change within our clients. It is our client's responsibility. It is on them. But certainly we can play a very important and critical and skillful role. And the more skill and mastery we can cultivate in being space holders and transformation holders, the easier it is for our clients to then access their own disappointment as well as their own empowerment, right? The parts within them that actually very much wants to change in order to become different. So this is it's been a huge, opportunity of growth for me to really continue to tap into the parts of me that doesn't want to change, right? That wants to feel different without becoming different. It's a difficult work. It's a difficult work, but there is no magic. And the ways in which we can grapple that with the people that we are bringing on to help us, like grapple with it, be in it with them, talk about this with them. You don't have to hold all of this alone. Okay, so that's one really big lesson that I've taken away from this year. And again, I'm not saying lesson as if I've somehow learned it. I think this language tends to be very limiting, lessons and learned, but it just means it's something a theme that I've been grappling with this year and will continue to grapple with it for as long as it takes shape in my life in a meaningful way. Okay, so another kind of big theme that I have been exploring is ways in which we have to let our little ones out. So what do I mean by that? So I know that parts work, internal family systems have become more popular, and within that, this idea of inner child work has become popular. Now, I've been facilitating inner child work since I started my coaching practice 10 years ago, and so it's really wild to see how much it has gained momentum. Inner child work can be very helpful. It's not for everybody, and it's not always helpful for everybody at any given moment, but it's just one tool in the toolbox. It's something that I talk about extensively in Worthy Women Rise because it can be a very helpful way to understand ourselves, is that we all have an inner child that has been frozen in time, usually around time of tension and tumultuousness and ruptures, and sometimes even to the extent that it's trauma. And now as adults, we kind of have a couple things going for us. This is the theory. The theory is that we have the adult part of us, but we also have the child part of us. And often, if it's unconscious, the child is often running the show. You make the joke that we're all children in adult bodies, that the many ways in which we're seeing the world is really through a lens of like a 7-year-old. And so it's important for us to, if we're using this theory, if we're understanding human psychology from this lens that we all have an inner child, then it's important for us to find ways to let the inner child really speak in order to, quote unquote, thaw the inner child and help the inner child develop. Another way of putting this in a more analytic or psychoanalytic language is that there are many theories that posit that we often get stuck psychically at a developmental age where we didn't get a need met. And that while, yes, we have adult functions and we can do adult things, that if we look at a person's experience in their lives and what they struggle with, we can typically pinpoint their struggles with a developmental need that wasn't met to develop. Yeah. So that's just another way of saying the same thing, that we all have an inner child, or that many of us are developmentally stuck somewhere. And so then the question is, how do you heal that, right? What does healing even look like? And I think one could argue that healing is about integration. It's about knowing all of your parts, or knowing that you have this inner child and tending to the inner child. But if we're looking at this from a developmental standpoint, then what do you imagine is required in order for us to developmentally grow? Well, we have to get those developmental needs met. Now, as an adult, it can be really hard to get these developmental needs met because you're no longer a child. And so we have to become creative, and we have to find ways to let this inner child have the developmental needs it needs to grow. Or we run the risk of continuing to run our lives through a very stuck pattern, a pattern that was very developed when we were very young. And I'm noticing that. I'm noticing how important it is for us to have a place to not need to be the adult. And whether that's in therapy, whether that's in a coaching relationship, whether that's with, very specific spaces, with like arranged agreements with your partner, it's important for us to give voice to and space for our inner child, or we really can continue to notice that there is an inner child and not grow, staying stuck, because we can acknowledge the inner child all we want, but if we're not giving opportunities for that child to express itself and to communicate its needs and to need what it needs without the adult function overriding the child, then what's the point? So often the way I see this in my sessions is I'll have someone say, well, I can't be mad at you, or I can't be upset at this because I know blah, blah, blah. But there is a part of me that is mad, or there is a part of me that doesn't understand. And I love that. I love when my clients can say that to me, because it means that they're attempting to give voice to something that often has a lot of shame and has been shut down. Oftentimes, if we don't give our younger parts places to rest, to talk, to have feelings, what we tend to do is we tend to drive it into our unconscious, which means we're no longer aware, and then we act it out. So instead of saying like, my little girl is mad at my husband for blah, 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 I will then just act out. I will forget that I have to pick him up at an appointment, for example. And I have a whole episode on acting out. I wonder if I can find it. I will find it and put it in the show notes, because it's a really good episode of the ways in which we act our stuff out. Like, we just put our stuff out there, and then we wonder what's going on. We wonder how we're getting caught up in the same pattern over and over and over again. The ways in which we break patterns, I've been talking about patterns for 10 years now. And there's different language that I have found for breaking patterns. Before, back when I was really focusing my work on binge eating and people with binge eating issues, it was about creating space between the action and the reaction, right? Between, like after the binge, before the shame, or right before the binge. Now, the language that I use in terms of breaking patterns is really learning how to tolerate slowing things down. And I actually talk about this in 2 episodes, episode 156 and episode 157, about speed and impulsivity and spontaneity. Actually, that's it. Episode 156 is about acting out. And episode 157 is about slowing things down. So both of these episodes really talk about the ways in which we use speed as a way to stay unconscious, as a way to drive our patterns. And I definitively can see that in the ways I used to binge. When you're binging, you don't want to slow down. Slowing down is the enemy of a binge, because if you slow down, then you're going to have to sit with all of the feelings that are here. And so when you binge, it feels really fast, and you have to inhale food before you can stop yourself. Slowing down can feel intolerable in our bodies. And so the healing work is about learning to put language to what's intolerable. I want to say that again. Healing is about putting language to what is intolerable. Because as we put language, as we build a structure that can hold these intolerable feelings, the feelings stop being so intolerable. And this can be really hard when we continue to operate as if we don't have younger, more immature parts of ourselves. So it's really important for us to find spaces to allow other parts of our experience to be named and understood, or else we run the risk of driving those parts underground, where then we will act out and use speed to justify why we should do certain things instead of think about things thoroughly. Now, I say think about things. I don't mean overthink. And what does the difference is? Oh my gosh, I think I talk much more about it in episodes 156 and 157. But I usually don't believe in this idea of overthinking. I think we can use thinking as a way to escape the body, and we can use thinking and language as a way to tap into and access our body. And that's what I'm talking about. How we can use our mind and use language and use relationship to deepen our understanding of ourselves. And putting language to what is intolerable is a part of that healing. And that includes allowing the inner child or the little one or whatever language you want to put, the immature parts of you, the traumatized parts of you, the frozen parts of you, or the sense of feeling frozen, immature, anger, frustrated, all of that. Allowing language and allowing space for that language to come forth is really, really important. And this has been really instrumental for me this year, is learning that there are spaces that I can cultivate that can feel like a good place for me to put my, for me to allow my inner child to really have language so that she can start to grow and no longer need to act out or burn relationships to the ground or do things that I don't really want to be doing. Okay. So that was a really, really big lesson for me this past year. And the world of, psychotherapy has helped put language to this for me so that I can really understand it in my work as well as in holding space for other people in their work as both a coach and a clinician. Okay. And then speaking of coach clinician, this past year was the first time that I held a year-long Worthy Women Rise. Now, if you're new to my podcast, Worthy Women Rise is my signature group program. It's a virtual program for women all over the world who want the tools and the skills to deepen their worth. It's for women who want to be together in a container with other like-minded women as they navigate this really treacherous part of themselves that self-sabotages and plays small and finds ways to stay hidden. Most women who come into Worthy Women Rise identify as people pleasers, perfectionists, ambitious, but also find ways to really stay stuck because of feelings of inadequacy and not enoughness, as well as feelings of too muchness. And so Worthy Women Rise is a 13-module program that I have developed over the course of the past 4 or 5-ish years. I've held 8, 9, I think, or 10 cohorts at this point. And refined these modules so that they really support you in cultivating worth. Okay, so I've done Worthy Women Rise as a 5-month program for a handful of cohorts, and I decided I wanted to try a year-long container. Now, I wanted to try a year-long container because I love longer work. I encourage my clients who come to work with me in my coaching capacity that I prefer longer-term work. I don't see myself as this magician who can wave a magic wand and give you the skills and then boom, you're changed, right? Talking about the first lesson that I've been really grounding myself in this year is that there is no quick. And wherever you see marketing for quick, they're lying. They're lying. There is no quick. If you see marketing for quick, they are lying. There is no magical cure. There may be some alleviation, for sure. That can be quick when we feel an alleviation of certain things. But if we don't develop a foundation, that alleviation is not going to stay for long. Okay, so there is no quick, and I wanted to try a container that was much longer, that was year long. And I completed that experience, both being in touch with how powerful a year-long container can be, and also how wonderful a year-long container can be, and also in touch with the fact that not everybody wants a year-long. So that's why I'm still offering a 5-month in the spring, and then I'll offer a year-long in the fall. And, okay, so some of the lessons that I've learned from this year-long experience is that, one, a smaller group is a better group. I enrolled 14 women in my year-long, and I think ultimately 10 is the max number of women that I will want to enroll in a cohort at any given time. And the reason why I like smaller groups is, I think we can tend to fall into this belief that the bigger is better, right? Particularly when we're wanting to seem successful. The bigger the launch or the more money or whatever, the bigger thing result is better. And so I admitted 14 women in, and looking back, I think that smaller groups allow for more potency, more intimacy, and more depth to the experience. And so I am going to be capping my program moving forward to 10 women in a cohort. It's just much richer that way. And my entire program is based on something that's not very popular, which is that intimacy, slowness, connection, is what ends up breaking our deeper relational patterns and experiences, such as the worthiness wound, more than anything else. Okay, so smaller is better. It was a big thing that I've learned. I've also gotten requests as feedback for more resources and more meditations, which is something I'm definitely going to be adding to future modules. People want retreats. I love that. In a post-COVID world, I certainly want to have a Worthy Women Rise retreat. I love the idea of merch and physical workbooks. These things all sound really nice and cool, and I definitely want to find ways to incorporate that into the program. One thing that I really wish I had done for the year-long cohort is done a mid-year review. Now, I do invite them, all applicants have to apply, which means they have to fill out a survey, and it gives me a sense of where they are. And then at the end of the program, I offer an opportunity for feedback, and both feedback and testimonials, whatever the women want to offer. And that gives me a sense of what's happening. But I really wish that I had done like a mid-year check-in, because then it would have allowed me to pivot or change something if I got a sense that a lot of women were having the same experience. Certainly maybe not even change things, but address them. And I think sometimes in group settings, we can become afraid to speak up and say that something isn't working, and it can feel much more accessible to do that on a one-on-one, such as in a review type format. And, where we feel hesitant to bring things into a group is worthy of exploration because it's probably connected to our relational patterns. However, I do also find there to be tremendous insight or tremendous value in doing some type of mid-year touch base. And I wish I had done that. Other things that I would have, that I've learned from this year long is that when it comes to groups, we tend to think that because it is longer, that we can add more. This is something I talk about in my mentorship a lot, is that coaches come into course creation and creating a group program, and they really want to jam it packed with blah, 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 content, skills, whatever it is, that there's a lot of pressure to want to add as much to the program as possible. And actually, I found that just because it was a year long doesn't mean that the women had more capacity for more. Because what ends up happening in a year long is that the program becomes much more embedded into their lives, and everyone is living a pretty busy life. As opposed to a 5-month, there can be a little bit more of a sprint mentality where you can kind of push yourself into creating space to do the modules, to do all the things because you're sprinting. Whereas a year long is more of a marathon, and that means you have to pace yourself and you have to find ways to create a lifestyle, right? Like marathon runners have a lifestyle of running as opposed to maybe sprint runners. Or I'm not saying the sprint runners don't have a lifestyle. What I mean to say that in order for you to run marathons, you have to have a stamina that you don't necessarily have to have for sprint work. And so in a year-long container, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can do more. It just means that there's now more time to do deeper. And I think it's important to set your expectations accordingly, because then that allows you to set the container. So, for example, in my 5-month, you pretty much get a new module every week or every other week. 13 modules, 5 months, you do the math. And the women find a way to make it work because they're sprinting through it. Now, with a year long, I released 1 module a month with 2 modules in 1 month. And there were still the same thing. The women still had challenges sometimes getting through the modules because now they had to find a way to integrate it into their lives. And so, if you're creating a group program as a coach, you want to think about that. The length of time doesn't necessarily mean that you can add more stuff. Simple is better. And I love that I got to experience that in my year long, that actually the content that I have is enough, and I can really allow rest of the program to be built off of the content, and less is more, and that transformation can take place and things can change within ourselves, not because of the modules or the content we consume, but the ways in which we're holding the modules, the way in which we're holding the content, if that makes sense. And so I really love that I got to experience that in this year long. And it's why I'm going to do another year long, because I found a lot of value in that. All right. So those are kind of like the big things that I learned about Worthy Women Rise year long. It was really cool to be in the spaces with these women for a whole year, to see them every single week, and to learn more about their lives and their inner worlds than I ever would have in a 5-month. And the women bonded in such a beautiful way, of course, because they went through a whole year-long experience together in a pandemic. And so it's a different experience, the 5 months and the year-long. And it really is up to each individual to find what feels right for them. I always trust the timing, that whatever you feel called for, it's the right one for you. But I will say that each container, whether it's a 5-month or a year long, offers something really unique and something really powerful. So I will be doing another year long, in the fall of next year. So stay tuned for that. Okay. All right. And let's talk about the final kind of theme that I have been reckoning with this past year. And it's this idea that deprivation creates competition. I think we tend to look at our capitalistic world and think that competition is just like a natural part of the human experience. And we've read books about kids being stuck on an island, whatever the fuck that name of the book was. And like, what happens? They end up competing against each other, right? That like competition is a natural part of the human experience. And I think capitalism really grounds itself in that model. I just caught myself the other day thinking like, oh, well, I don't want healthcare to be private because then they can charge exorbitant prices. However, doesn't privatization breed competition, and doesn't competition create ingenuity? And I think that this idea that we need to be competitive, that we need to compete with each other in order for our shit to be the best shit in the world, is very, what is the word that I'm looking for? Oh my God, the word is not coming to me. It just kind of supports capitalism, right? Because that's essentially what capitalism is, that the market will determine what the production is, right? Like our consumers they determine the market, and your best products will sell. So I've been thinking about that a lot in my own life, and how I feel like always been a very competitive person. And in reflecting in my childhood of what makes me competitive and what do I compete for and what do I strive to get out of competition, what I have found is that actually, in my psyche, competition is born out of deprivation. And you can again see that in capitalism, how deprivation, not having the thing, breeds competition to now have the thing. But what would happen if deprivation didn't exist? If there actually wasn't a lack, if there actually wasn't a either or mentality, what would happen to the place of that feels competitive? Would it continue to exist? Would we compete with each other if there was an abundance? And I think the answer, for me at least, is no. If I knew, truly, like foundationally knew, that I was supported and loved and anything that I wanted is inevitable for me, and that I will experience everything that I want, and that my life is full of meaning and purpose and joy, all of the things, right? If I really imagined that I could feel this way, would I also feel like I had to compete? That life was a dog-eat-dog world? That people's behavior, that there was like a system of measuring of like, I'm not going to text them until they text me, or I'm not going to buy something unless they buy me something, right? Like that kind of this or that mentality, tit for tat. would we really be having that type of mindset? Would we see the world through this lens of taking stock of someone's behavior and comparing it to our behavior and determining how we react based on how they react? That kind of competition, would that exist? And I think the answer is no. I think deprivation begets competition. Without deprivation, if we felt fully supported and loved and nourished and abundant, I don't think we would ever feel like we needed to measure how much someone gave us to determine how much we give. We wouldn't see relationships as a competition. We wouldn't need to have relationships always feel so transactional. But I think we tend to view relationships as transactional because we tend to view ourselves as transactional because we somehow through culture, through parental relationships, we have found that there is a deprivation of what we need and want. And if we are deprived, then we need to be very careful in measuring what we get. And competition, it comes from needing to then compete for scarce resource. But I think the things that we really want are not scarce. We may have created scarcity. I'm thinking of the diamond industry and how there's one company that owns the mines that finds diamonds, and that diamonds are actually quite abundant. But in order to contain a market and keep the market so that diamonds are expensive, they have to diminish their production. And so it's a false deprivation. It's a false lack. There's actually an abundance of. I think that's interesting. And I wonder what the cost is psychically when we live in competition. What is costing us by living in a transactional world versus a more relational way of looking? And so if this is resonating with you, if you notice yourself seeing the world through a lens of deprivation, then it's important for us to start to think of ourselves and look at ourselves from the lens of what have I been deprived of? And that goes back to lesson number 2 or theme number 2 of where have we become developmentally stuck because there's a need there that hasn't been met. So that kind of sums up my year of things that I've been really grappling with. And I hope that it's been supportive and useful for you to hear these things as you think about your own healing and think about what you're looking to create in 2022. Again, my Worthy Women Rise year in review is coming at the end of the year. Get on my email list at thaissky.com/email so that you are on the list and you will be the first to get my review. It includes so many questions to help you reflect on this past year so you can move into your new year with clarity and an idea of what worked and didn't work in the past year. You can also, just to reiterate, come work with me on a one-on-one basis, thaissky.com/coaching, or in my mentorship, thaissky.com/mentorship, or Worthy Women Rise at worthywomenrise.com. It has been such an honor and privilege to be here with all of you through this past year. I love my podcast. I love getting an opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you. My podcast is such a wonderful soft landing place for me to just share my thoughts, share my way of thinking about things, and giving you some ideas of how you can deepen your healing. I'm looking forward to the new year. I've been thinking about some really cool things for my podcast and what I want it to look like and what I want to create in the new year. So stay tuned for that. I'll probably be back in the second or third week of January in preparation to launch Worthy Women Rise. I adore all of you. Thank you for being here on this journey with me. I will be in touch with you all in the new year. Have a wonderful end to your 2021, and I will see you in 2022.